welcome to the first of many episodes of this podcast. My name is Rafid Dewan, and I am the co-founder and co-host of Capital Interns. Our podcast essentially aids those high school students who are lost in choosing a career that they should go into. We will be having 12 standout university and college students who are both studying and doing their internships at the same time. Unlike other podcasts, we will focus on our guests' passions, post-secondary life, and personal experience rather than just work experience. We hope to start our phone recording podcast and eventually to a full-fledged studio where we can help nonprofits such as Kids Help Phone, the LGBTQ plus community, and Black Lives Matter. Without further ado, I'll pass it on to Darina.
Hi guys, my name is Darina, your other co-host and co-founder of Capital Interns, and today we have with us someone who is passionate about tech and sharing the knowledge with the world. Super cool developer intern at SurveyMonkey right now, multiple internships at awesome companies like Kinaxis and Foko Retail. They never fail to challenge themselves with the next project. Other than work, you can find them playing the piano, 3D printing, and even creating content on their YouTube channel, Tay Talks Tech. Let's welcome Taylor Abraham.
Hi everyone, thank you so much to the both of you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here on our first episode. On today's episode, we're going to delve into Taylor's journey navigating software engineering at Carleton University, his passion projects, and his internship experience. We're going to test out his rapid-fire round skills and even dig deep into his personal identity journey over the years. Alright, to start off, let's talk about your program, Software Engineering at Carleton. You're now in your fourth year, and when you first joined university in 2015, you started in the Computer Systems Engineering program. Why the shift in programs?
I did start out in computer systems engineering originally. When I went to engineering, I knew I wanted to build stuff and I wanted to make things. So I went to systems to give hardware a try. Found out it wasn't for me, so I ended up switching to software, but I'm still happy I got to try both out.
Awesome! Alright, so your first coding project as a kid was a cookie clicker type app. There's a fun tax fraud story to that actually, but we'll get to that later. What are some of the cool projects you're working on right now?
So yeah, right now, and that is an absolutely amazing story. Right now, I'm working on a tracker for Magic the Gathering. It's basically a tracker for your tournaments, how you perform. So Magic Gathering is a card game you can play against other people. You typically go to tournaments. And so what I'm building is a tracker for that to go and track your stats. When I looked at this, I was like, there's no real good way to track how you're doing, how your deck is doing, how you're performing in different scenarios. So seeing that problem, I wanted to make something to go and solve that dilemma. So I'm building this application to go and run those stats for you. And that's definitely my main project right now. Other than that, as Darina mentioned, I am starting up a YouTube channel called Tay Talks Tech. And that's something I'm putting a lot of time into, and all you should definitely go and check out if you're interested.
Tell us a bit about the channel. What's it about?
Yeah, for sure. So Tay Talks Tech is a place for me to talk about my experiences, a lot of what I'm coming here to talk about today and more. My purpose of this channel is for people who are looking into internships, looking at getting into software, people who are generally interested in entering the field or looking to better themselves and figure out where to go next. This is the kind of information I'm really going to be sharing. So the first series I'm running through on my channel is Things I Wish I Knew. My first episode ever was things that I wish I knew in high school, so if any of you are interested in more information on that, definitely go and check that out. In general, I try to provide similar content like that, talking about some of my lessons I learned, talking about some technology and introductions to it, kind of giving a lot of introductory material to help you really figure out your path and to help you progress.
I was just gonna say, high schoolers these days are super lucky just because resources like that are so readily available. But that didn't exist when I was going through high school, you know?
Absolutely. Definitely feel that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, these tutorials, right? Were you inspired from YouTubers like Traversy Media or Joma Tech? Or did you decide to do this yourself?
I definitely do have large inspiration for my videos. In particular, I try and focus more on the soft skills side or keeping things high level. So My inspiration, I wouldn't say came from those super detailed coding tutorial channels. Instead, one of my biggest inspirations and almost a bit of model for my channel was a channel called Fun Function. He's an amazing developer who worked at Spotify in the past and went off to go make his own YouTube channel and career out of that. And he so beautifully talks about software at a high level, talking about overall concepts, helping out those looking to really do better. And one thing I absolutely love is he does a great job of integrating mental health talks into that too, and just normalizing stigma around that. So all in all, his personality and his channel were definitely big inspirations for what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's awesome, honestly. Speaking of inspirations, we were wondering how you can inspire first-year engineering students going into software engineering. What do you think of what projects they can work on right now? And how important do you think those projects really are?
So yeah, I think it's been mentioned enough if you've listened to pretty much any advice ever. The first thing that comes up nowadays is to have side projects. I'm going to spare the details of that and rather talk about how you should approach making these projects. Talked about literally this exact thing in my first video. I think one of the biggest misconceptions I had going into first year was that like your projects have to be super serious. You've got to have some really serious use case for it. It's going to be a very practical thing. But like, honestly, just go and do whatever you're going to have fun with, right? So my advice to first year is for like, what kind of projects can you do? Figure out something fun that interests you. It could be something serious if you want it to be. It can be something silly. It can be a Minecraft mod. It can be a helper for a game you play. Honestly, pick something that interests you, figure out a problem that you can solve, or just some fun little thing you want to mess around with, and build something for it.
I see. Yo, real quick, can you tell us a little bit more about the tax fraud story? I really want to hear that again.
Yeah, so that was an amazing one. So yeah, my first ever game that I ended up publishing was to Congregate, one of the old Flash game sites where people posted their Flash games, which was all the rage. And it was effectively a cookie clicker pre-cookie clicker. It was called Button Upgrade, and you upgraded a button that I literally drew in MS Paint, the absolute pinnacle of graphic design. So it ended up getting like decently popular, got some plays. I made like $40 of ad revenue or something. So one day I tried to claim that money. Couldn't do it because I didn't have a US tax number because I'm Canadian. So I just left the money there and I couldn't do anything with it. Fast forward a few weeks or a few months later, and my dad gets a call from some government agency, and I'm just like on my computer doing my thing, and I just overhear in the background, hey, so you they're apparently saying that we owe the US like $40 or something of unclaimed tax money. And I'm like 12 at this time.
Taylor most wanted. Yo, FBI, open up.
Kid me was terrified, obviously. I was like, oh, I messed up. In the end, it was all sorted out. They were like, hey, we don't care.
Did you get the money in the end?
No, I still have $40 of unclaimed tax money on a site that I think still exists.
No way. Oh my god. Well, you know, emergency funds in case you ever need it.
Exactly. If I go work in the US, then I'll claim it when I go there.
Exactly. When we talked a bit about your high school experience, you described it as pretty poor. I hadn't yet figured myself out. I relate to that sentence, and I'm sure a lot of students at that age do as well. Can you elaborate a bit on what you meant by that?
Yeah, absolutely. My high school, I think, I just classify it as the time before I knew things. I feel like university was really where I learned a lot about how to learn ultimately. I learned about what kind of things there are to learn in software, where to go to learn about things. I felt more comfortable going out to events. There were more social events going on. In high school, I just didn't really know where to go to learn about different coding I want to do. I was in Canada, and a lot of my friends would go to like the downtown area, and that was hard for me to go to. So I really wasn't able to do much during that high school time. I'd say it's definitely university was the much more interesting time for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's where you also learned a lot about yourself too, right? What you like,
Absolutely.
what you didn't like. Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of which, when you went into computer systems, you were passionate about makerspace type stuff, at the time at least. Later on, do you feel if you had the right resources, you would have known software engineering would have been the proper path for you? How do you think these resources play a pivotal role compared to where you started out 4 or 5 years ago?
Absolutely, I could have known a lot sooner if the resources were there. I very firmly believe we don't have enough introduction to specialization earlier on in high school. It's legitimately really hard to figure out exactly what you want to do because your high school courses are like math, science, like chemistry, physics, history. So it's like, okay, it can help you figure out if it's one of those broad categories, but it doesn't do well at helping you figure out what within that you wanted to do. My example is like, I know I've wanted to do software since I was like 10 or 12 or something, but I only figured out what I want to do within software, which is full stack development, like a year ago because I didn't have any opportunity to really figure that out until this point. So definitely for embedded, it's exactly the same story. If there was some way I could have been more exposed to it earlier on in school to figure out what it's actually like in the workplace and what you'd actually be doing, definitely that would have helped me out, and I think that would be a great thing for high schools to have.
I think so too. I would have really liked if there were, for example, when I was in 12th grade, if there had been university students coming and giving a talk about their program, about what it's like when you go to university. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Speaking of resources, I just want to give a quick shout out to a really cool organization out there. There's actually a student club called CU Blueprint that recently started up this summer at Carleton University. I know there's a chapter at Waterloo and UC Berkeley too, actually. So what they essentially do is they're a student chapter that helps build software technologies for nonprofits. It's a really great way for first-year software engineering students to be part of a really powerful initiative that mimics real-life workplace environments. It's a great thing to put on your resume. They're actually hiring developers, designers, and project managers. So be sure to check out their website at cublueprint.org for more information. Anyways, back to the podcast. I was wondering what were some of the resources that you advocate for that students should take advantage of right now. I have a couple that are on my mind right now. Do you think that you should invest in online paid courses, or do you feel that there's enough free courses to do whatever you want right now?
So investing in paid online courses from perspective of like, should high school teachers be investing or should like the students be investing?
The students are the ones that are actually investing.
Personally, I find that there's few cases you really need a course. I think it can be useful if you're truly learning something from scratch to finish. For example, you want to start learning web development, you know nothing. It may be good to watch a tutorial, get the basics of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. It's probably going to be worth it then. But for pretty much any other case, I think it's more worthwhile looking into specifics, whether it's on YouTube or on blogs or just on Google. If you're kind of wondering about something in particular, like, okay, I know JavaScript now, I want to know, I don't know, I want to learn about more advanced loops. I want to learn about functional programming or something. Like, I think it's better to just go out to some of the free content or blogs that are out there. There's a ton of free content. Definitely at least like take a look at what's out there first. And then if you can't find anything, maybe consider a course.
I usually use LinkedIn as my free resource because there's like a lot of interns who are posting their stories and their upbringings and their technologies that they're using at work. And they actually even go in depth of like the frameworks that they're using and how others can use them too. Especially developer advocates. Like they're so pivotal now because like it makes learning a companies' technology a lot easier now, since their job is literally to teach other people how to actually, like, use their tech. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I definitely think LinkedIn is also a really good one.
And for those of you who don't know, so a developer advocate is basically just someone who's working at a company where that company builds some tech that other people use, and then so this person's job is dedicated to imparting that tech onto others who want to use it.
You started university in September 2015. What was first year like, especially when you lived at home?
First year was definitely a big change from high school. A lot more responsibility, a lot less of teachers just like watching over your shoulder. Now you're kind of on your own for the first time. So that in itself, university all in all, was a pretty big change for me. Being home, I did have some regrets, because I definitely did miss out on some of the things going on just on campus, the events going on while people were on residence, spontaneous outings nearby. If I was closer by, it probably wouldn't have been as much of an issue, but since I was further out in a more rural area, I definitely did feel that a little bit. Other than that, first year was probably my most learning, I'd say. Definitely had to change a lot of things, had some rough starts at the beginning where I was like, oh, this thing I was doing in high school isn't working anymore. Some things, like, you can't just like slack and then still do well. Things catch up on you really fast. You really need to keep a much more rigorous schedule.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. University, especially like one semester, even though it's 4 months, it goes by super, super fast. Before you know it, midterms are rolling around, and then you blink, and finals are already here. So
Let's try not to scare the high school students.
Oh, good
the one
point.
thing
Good
I always
point.
like to tell people, because I'm like, this is like the story that happened to me that I never want to happen to anyone else, was... It's not the one you're thinking of. That's another one I'll get to in a sec. But so what I found was, like, the biggest hit was when I got into university in first year, I think it was physics or calculus that started out being a recap of content we already covered. So I went into it being like, okay, this is easy. This is stuff we did in grade 12. And so I really didn't have to do anything. However, there was a point where no transition, snap, we were into new content. I did not catch on to that fast enough, and literally, like, just 2 weeks went by and, like, I was buried in work. So it's like, be careful riding the wave. Don't get caught up in, like, oh, this is all just review, because, like, as soon as it's not, things are gonna hit you really, really fast. So just be ready for that transition.
Yeah. Yep. Big transition. Oh my god.
This is really funny, because I remember I was in calculus in first year, and like you said, first day of the class, it's all like grade 12 stuff. And then fast forward a couple of weeks later, it's like, what did I miss? You know, where did I land?
I guess, like, I'm the only one who was not, like, in that zone, because, like, I knew that this would happen. So, like, I was a good student and went to all my classes in first year and actually sat in the front of every class and took notes. And that's why I did so well in first year. But then, I don't know, my motivation just went, like, down and down and down after first year. It's a trend. Like, for anyone who's going into university, trust me, your motivation starts to go downhill. Like, when you're in first year, you're so happy and everything, but in engineering, oh man, it just goes downhill. There's no coming back up.
You know, something else, like, you were talking about losing motivation. First day, first year, I have 5 notebooks. I have all the textbooks. I have a pencil case full of pens.
Yo, you got screwed.
And then by 4th year, I have 1 notebook for all my classes, 1 pen.
Use lecture notes.
And that's it.
Don't use the textbook. You save so much money.
No textbooks. Forget textbooks. I did not have those.
No textbooks. We're done with that.
When you mentioned that some things had to change from high school to when you went to uni, what were some of the new habits that you adopted while in university?
So I'd say probably the biggest habit that not only affected university but also my personal life was the point where I really started calendaring everything. When you're in high school, every day you go in, you have your classes, and it's like, okay, for this class, reminder everyone, this is due Wednesday, and then Tuesday comes, it's like, reminder everyone, this is due Wednesday. And even if not, you're constantly in that class, so you have constant reminders of things. University is the first time where it's like you have your 2 lectures a week and you have a ton of work in between, but you don't have another class, but you still like have to be doing that work for that class. So it's the first time that you really have to be keeping track of your own reminders, your own scheduling. So that was when I started writing down like all my assignments, all my exams, all my tests. And then I started calendaring just like all my stuff. And that was a huge, huge change for me that really helped. Definitely, of course, a habit you kind of have to build going into university is discipline. I was definitely a lot lazier in high school and a lot more relaxed and just do things as I feel. University is definitely where things get more serious and you can't just coast along, get by. So I'd say that's the other main thing that really had to change.
That is some really good advice. Always have an agenda. It really helps.
I was just gonna ask about how did you fit into the university culture, and like how did you find the Carleton University culture in general when you started to get more involved?
So yeah, I think I have a pretty interesting perspective to share on this, just because coming from high school, I was definitely a very, very sheltered and introverted person. Definitely kept a lot more to myself. Once I got to university, the first thing I did was I went to Frosh. Honestly, I had a major panic attack during Frosh, and it was a really overwhelming transition for me. So the change for me was really drastic at first, and that's why a lot of my first year was kind of just adjusting to things. Once I got into my second year, I found it really easy to adapt into the culture, honestly, because once I got that initial point of just like being okay, being with large groups of people and just being more out there and with people, there are so many friendly people in engineering. Like, I feel like all the amazing, like really strong initiative people within engineering are the people who are going to be going to the societies, and not just for engineering, for any sort of degree. Extracurriculars are such a great place to meet other people like yourself. I found that was actually the best place for me to go and to fit in easiest, because you already know you have like something kind of in common with your personality there.
Would you say that would be the number one advice you would give to your younger self?
I mean, I don't know. For me personally, I definitely had that year where I did have to just slowly adapt to things, and it was a lot of change for me. But that's like a very personal journey and a personal story. For other people, I'd definitely recommend go out to those societies, go seek out societies, go seek out events going on.
Yeah, I agree with that, because like you said, that's where you're gonna meet
Yes.
people who have similar personalities as you and people who share the same share
Absolutely.
common interests with you, because you know they also took that initiative to join the club for probably the same reason as you. So yeah, I definitely agree. Join some clubs in first year.
Yeah, definitely the number one advice. And speaking of which, like, we're gonna go over your portfolio a bit, and it's really something. Like, you first started the local hack day in 2017, and then you also organized Terrible Hack Day too, the first one, which I know is like probably your favorite memory, and yeah, and then you went on to volunteering at CU Hacking in 2017, and then you became the co-organizer for that hackathon as well in 2018. And now, as we all know, CU Hacking is now the largest and the longest running hackathon in Ottawa, and that is something that it took us time to grow to achieve that, and we went through a lot of hurdles for that, and I was on the team with you, and I know that like we saw where it could go wrong on so many different levels, but it was all a learning experience that we carried on, and we pulled on really strong. And you also became the chair of one of the most well-known and the most probably prestigious student branch in Canada in terms of IEEE status is concerned. You're the IEEE Carleton student branch chair. So I just want to describe it in like a few words. Like, what was your reason to get involved in all these different activities in the first place?
Effectively, all of this boils down to pretty much the number one advice that I go and tell people getting into university within software specifically, and that is to go to hackathons. My first hackathon was one of the best experiences I had in my life. I learned so much. I met so many helpful and friendly people. I literally was just like in awe of this whole amazing culture around me. And from that moment, I literally just knew to myself, I want to help cultivate this sort of environment. I want to be able to give back to others what everyone in this community has given to me on this day. And ultimately, that really was the beginning of everything. That was ultimately what really inspired me to get into extracurriculars. I saw how much people were out there giving, what incredible things were out there, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to help make that experience for others.
And going over for CU Hacking, it has over 1,000 applicants, right? And you led a team of like over 15 people in 2018. So I was wondering, a lot of people don't understand the organization for the hackathon because everyone just thinks it's like, oh, just a one-day event. How much organization could there be? I just want to know what were the challenges you faced during this experience, and what are some of the takeaways you got out of it?
Leading a hackathon is definitely one of the hardest things I've done in my life. Exactly as you said, even as I was getting into it, I definitely severely underestimated how much went into it. I think the biggest challenges for me was just that it ultimately took me from being a student where, you're typically doing the work, you're doing things. If you're working as an intern, you're working at the very, very bottom. Effectively, this is taking you straight to the top where you're now managing people, overseeing all of those different processes. So the challenges I had were pretty much that if you were a junior developer and then instantly promoted to a director, you'd just be like, oh my God, I understand all the super detailed stuff going on. Now I need to look at things at a very high level and coordinate all this. What do I do? So my challenges are mainly revolved around that. I'd say the biggest difficulties were figuring out that balance between micromanaging and I guess not managing enough, figuring out what detail to get involved, figuring out how to deal with conflict. Sometimes there were things that happened within the team where I had to go and resolve. And again, it's not common. You get brought in as a third party because you have people under you who are coming to you with this problem, and there's no one you have to go to ultimately. I think that was the biggest change. When you're a student, usually you have someone to talk to, either someone above you or someone next to you. Functioning as a co-lead, me and the other co-lead, we effectively were just at the top. We had no one to turn to above us, and that was a really scary thing.
Yeah, it definitely is a huge transition. I know that feeling very, very well, and I think Darina also knows that feeling too when she led SPAC.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember in the middle of leading SPAC, it was around December, and I was starting to have panic attacks because from all the pressure and the stress. So yeah, it's definitely hard, especially when everyone is looking up to the lead and you're supposed to be paving the path for them.
Yeah, a lot of people think the lead job is you just tell people what to do. But it's a lot more than just telling people what to do. Like there is scheduling, and then conflict of resolution, and then there is also organizing as well on the day of, and being that source of contact for everything essentially. And it's a lot of responsibility than what a lot of people initially think. But I will say this: it is the most rewarding experience you'll get for leadership. Definitely.
I think the best way to summarize that is just like when you're working as a student, for example, or as an intern, you're working at the lowest level, so you basically have control over everything. If something doesn't get done by your deadline, basically it ends up being your fault, or it's like Word crashed or something. Like you know how bad you feel when that happens, right? It's like completely out of your control. As you go up, you start relinquishing your control, right? You have to start trusting everyone below you. Innately, I think people want to micromanage a lot just because it gives you that sense of control you used to have. But the reason it's so stressful is because you have all these unknowns below you. Instead of you having control of everything, you have all these different teams managing these tasks. And ultimately, anything that fails will ultimately come up onto you, and you will have to take responsibility. But you don't necessarily have direct control over all these things. There's more uncertainty you're dealing with.
I like how you phrased it. It's kind of like you just gotta roll with it, you know, like everyone just keeps throwing, you know, ping pong balls at you, and you just kind of gotta make sure you're hitting it right. And
Yep.
when you don't, then gotta figure out what to do in that scenario. Speaking of that, are there moments in your career after your experience with CU hacking where you were able to apply what you learned from it?
Absolutely. So I personally had the experience of working as an intern manager at Kinaxis, which I'll talk more about later. But obviously, that's a place where I got to directly apply my management experience to that. In a more general sense, though, I'd say the biggest thing I got out of it was ultimately just, as we talked about with all the stress, things work very differently when you're under that much pressure. I learned so much about conflict resolution, talking things out when you're stressed, because everything functions differently, and it's something you just can't prepare for until you've really gone through it. I definitely had like some embarrassing moments I'm not proud of while I was still figuring that out, but coming out of it, once I learned those things, I've definitely been able to carry that stress management, dealing with conflicts and high stress scenarios. Those are skills I'd say I just did not have before, and that's something that has helped me throughout my life.
For sure. And like you said, you know, people make mistakes, pick themselves back up. That's how they learn, and that's how they grow. As you were talking about Kinaxis, you have done multiple internships at different companies. You started as a software developer intern at Curtiss-Wright, then as a web dev intern, and then intern manager at Kinaxis, and you're now on your second term at SurveyMonkey. Let's talk about your first internship at Curtiss-Wright. Your interview with Curtiss-Wright is truly inspiring. Can you share the story with the audience?
That is an absolute amazing story I'll always continue to tell. In my interview, they proceeded to ask me 7 questions about the C programming language. I answered every single one of them wrong. Every single one. I got 0 right. And I still got an offer out of that, which still blows my mind to this date. What I think sticks with me the most is the reason why. It wasn't just they had no one else. What they literally said to me in these words was, we normally wouldn't hire someone of your experience, which is understandable. I was straight out of my first or second year. But we saw how passionate you are about your projects and how invested in learning you are, and so we think that you're going to be able to pick up.
I think that's the key, to be honest, especially when you're looking for your first internship. You just gotta be willing to learn, and you gotta just have passion for what you're doing. What was the internship like for you?
The internship itself was the internship where I learned I didn't want to do embedded, so I can't talk much about it because I can't put any of this on the fault of the company. It simply just wasn't the right field for me. Throughout my internship, I was just dealing with a lot of the very technical details of embedded computing, which, as I mentioned, I found just wasn't my forte. The highlight, I'd say, was I still tried to make the most of it, even though I got into it and I was like, okay, I don't really like this work. I'll keep doing it because obviously I'm still here. But I wanted to figure out how I could make the most of it. And so I took the time to try and book little meetings or just talk with the other hardware or software developers and just try to learn stuff from them, just to talk with them about some things I thought was interesting. I booked a meeting with our director of engineering on my way out and just had a chat with him about my future things to do. So that's why I'd say really made it worthwhile for me. And I think that's the strongest point of any internship is the people around you. Do not be afraid to learn from them. They're there to if they're there to chat for you, I can't necessarily say it's a case for everyone, but if they're there to talk, definitely take that opportunity and learn something from them.
Yeah, for me, a key point that I always keep in mind is be myself. I'm just having a conversation with somebody else, a normal person. Since you've worked in both the high level and the low level, how different is the field of embedded versus high level applications? Was there more bureaucracy since you worked in defense?
So yeah, naturally, I wouldn't say this is specific to the difference of embedded and software. I think this is more the difference of how, I guess how safety critical what you're working on is. At Curtiss-Wright, we were working on microcontrollers that were going into fighter jets. These, of course, need to be super, super rigorously tested. You can't just throw an intern on a development project, because if they mess up, planes are going down. Meanwhile, when you're working at SAS, typically we're getting to this point where it's like there's so much ability to roll back, and there's so many layers of testing environments where you can just throw stuff out there. You can tell an intern to go and build an entire new feature because it goes through QA, they figure something out, hell, even if it makes it to prod, and then they're like, oh, never mind, we can't have that. You just roll it back because you have that ability. So I'd say that's kind of the key difference in bureaucracy. I think that's really what makes it.
Definitely. So we're just gonna hop off from the Curtiss-Wright train to the Kinaxis train. So you were there for 8 months, which is a really long time, and I think that was your first long one. You did 4 months as like a web dev intern, and then 4 months as an intern manager. So you basically bumped up in promotion. Kinaxis is a company that specializes in supply chain management. So what was it like working in a more like higher level field, and especially more of an enterprise field? So what did you learn about supply chain management? What do you think first years can do to get a chance at Kinaxis essentially?
Yeah, so it definitely was really cool working for a company that deals with supply chain management, SCM. SCM is a pretty interesting field I think a lot of people don't know about, and I definitely wouldn't have if I didn't go there. For a super brief rundown on it, SCM is basically, let's say you're running a car manufacturing facility. Your car needs to be built from a body, tires, and engine, super simplified. This engine you can either buy from someone or you can build it yourself. To build the engine, you need, some nuts, some bolts, some parts. So it's this giant tree of basically this massive assembly line. At any point you can buy things from manufacturers. You can build them yourselves. You can build some of the pieces. There's so many variables in it that SCM is basically this field of these super specialized contractors who go and take care of all these calculations. It's a really cool field, and I think in coronavirus we're seeing a lot of the importance of that. A lot of factories are getting shut down, so suddenly you need to rework how your whole supply chain is structured.
I'm just gonna go into more so about your role at Kinaxis. So you started as a web dev intern there, and then I just want to know what you actually learned as a web developer at Kinaxis.
I definitely learned a lot just about how the industry works in general. Just kind of the key differences between how software works in school and how software works in reality. I could talk a lot about that, but to sum it up, the main differences I'd say are in the workplace, you deal with lots of old code. There's lots of old pieces you have to work your way around. You're not working with the shiniest new framework all the time. There's old pieces, there's new pieces, and everything in between. Additionally, the team dynamic is a lot different than when you're at school. Group projects are nothing like a simulation of how software actually really works. Some classes might give you a good idea, but I'd say there I really learned about the process of building something, making sure to consult the right people. There's times you'll need to talk design with product, with other developers, merging it in, really being a part of this larger structure. So I think those are the main things I really learned about web dev while I was there.
The next thing I just want to talk about is how did you use your position as a web developer to promote yourself into the intern management position?
So when they came to me, with this position, there were a few other web developer interns, and what they told me was that they wanted me because they saw my initiative in other initiatives going on in the organization. So there was a public speaking group there that I was an active member of. They just saw the initiative and the things that I did, and so for that reason they thought I'd be a good fit for this. So definitely those little extracurriculars you can do between work. Those things show your personality definitely is noticed by others. It's not just how good can you code, and this is, I think, direct proof of that.
Well, did you work specifically as an intern manager?
Yeah, so as an intern manager, it's kind of it's a little funny to describe. So basically, we had an 8-week-long program where we brought in some high school interns. So I was an intern managing these younger interns. It was a really cool program. We built a floor finder, I guess kind of like a floor mapper and desk organizer, like where everyone was seated within the company, and it let you find specific people. So I got to teach 4 high school interns some basics of building out a web app, split them up into a team, and I acted as a manager for them while they built this product.
Yo, why doesn't every company have something like that, a floor finder? Because I always get lost when I start a new job.
I need that.
Especially
right?
when I gotta go find someone I've never had to find before. And it's like, gotta go through the maze, you know? Yeah. How was your role as an intern manager different from your role as a web dev?
I'd say, again, this is where I took the most away from being a hackathon organizer. Personally, I'm very fond of the management route. There's kind of 2 routes you go in software, either more towards management or towards being an architect. This helped me really confirm that I definitely want to do management. Some of the key differences, I'd say, is just you're working at a even higher level of the code than in regular software. Instead of actually going and developing these parts, you're kind of just looking at these parts from a very high level and going, okay, we have a back end. It's going to be communicating in this general way to the front end. And even that's a bit more architecture-y. But also, you're a lot more involved with the process. So something that you might deal with as a software engineer is different meetings, like agile meetings that are designed for specific purposes to help get the team up to date. When you're a manager, you really start looking at the value of those. You aren't just blindly doing these because your manager told you. You're running these things, so now you need to think about, okay, why am I doing this? What am I getting out of it? So I think the main difference was it made me think a very different way about process.
Which role did you enjoy more?
Personally, being an intern manager was still the best experience I've had in my life. It was incredibly rewarding. I love being able to help people, being able to teach people. And again, I functioned as kind of a manager / mentor / architect. But definitely that was probably the best experience I've had to date. I really loved that.
Yeah, my best experience for any hackathon was being in the same team as you. I learned so much from you. Oh my god. I didn't know I would learn that much in the span of 24 hours. Like, me and Ashna, like, because of you, like, we learned so much, and we were actually rewarded in the end because of it. And it was all thanks to, like, all your hard work and, like, even teaching us, like, some stuff about machine learning too. I could really see you as, like, an actual, like, teacher or, like, an actual manager or even a developer advocate. Like, I can really see you as a developer advocate to, like, help, get more people on board on a company's product and their frameworks, right? So yeah, props to you. Like, I can see that. You should definitely consider that as a career.
It's definitely a direction I'm very much looking into, and that's a lot of why I've really wanted to start a YouTube channel, because I just want to open up more avenues to be able to teach people.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking of which, we're gonna do a little bit more about Q&A about yourself, Taylor. So we're gonna play a little game.
Okay.
And it's called Rapid Fire Round. So you have 5 seconds to answer 12 questions, and Doreen's gonna time you. Okay?
Wait, I have 5 seconds in total?
Exactly.
Yep.
5 seconds for
it's
each
rapid fire
question.
Oh, for each. Okay.
Yeah. No, not for all the questions. For each one.
I was like, hold on. Okay.
All right, are you ready?
A little scared. Let's do this.
All right. First question. What's your favorite internship?
Internship, SurveyMonkey, hands down.
Your favorite software engineering course?
Software engineering course? Software security with Jason.
Pineapple on pizza or not?
Yes! What kind of
Yo!
question is this?
Get out! Get out!
I
Get
agree.
out. All of you, get out.
I completely agree.
Love this podcast.
Why is this always a
The
debate?
door is right
People
there.
should just try
The
it.
door is right there. Okay. All right.
For Magic the Gathering, name an example of a card super type.
Card super type. Oh god, snow.
Yeah. You got it.
That was actually good, yeah.
Okay. Scariest moment in university.
When I almost missed that exam.
Taylor, I'm always counting down to 5 seconds, and you always answer on the 5th second. So I can't be saying time's up. It's really consistent.
Yeah, it's good.
Best piece of advice you've ever received.
Oh.
Time's up. I got you this time.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
But actually, I like that question. I actually like that question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yeah, I can answer that. There's definitely a lot of good pieces of advice that I've heard throughout my life. I'm trying to remember the exact wording of this, but there was a quote that was effectively what someone else thinks of me is none of my business. And it's kind of advice in the form of a quote where it's just like, don't be caring about other people's opinions of you. That's nothing that you should care about. And I think it's just so important for professional life, personal life, so many places. That might actually be a quote from RuPaul.
I need a shirt with that written on it, because that was really deep. And that hit really deep.
So, what's the most interesting thing in your room right now?
In my room right now, probably my 3D printed Eevee. I love it.
Yeah, I agree. I love that.
Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Oh dear God, Mark Rosewater, because he's like the only person I know. I know like 0 actors. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. Best gift you've ever received.
Best gift I've ever received. Switch.
That's true. You can't beat that. You can't beat that.
Who were the original Gatewatch members?
Oh, Jace, Nissa, Gideon. Okay, I can't name 5 in 5 seconds. Chandra and Liliana.
You got it.
Yes.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, but
I'll give you that one.
like, okay, Lilian though, like I saw it's not it's not considered as a Gatewatch member for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
she's
saw it
like
somewhere.
a rebel.
Yeah. What's your spirit animal?
I don't know. I've found out once and I never remembered it.
All right, time's up. You didn't even need to say that.
Wait, spirit animal in like astrological sign or just like what I identify
yeah.
with?
No, like what you identify with.
Oh, wolf or fox. They're silly and all over the place.
Yep.
If your house was on fire, what are the 2 things you go back in to save?
Computer, 3D printer.
Wow,
Oh
that
my
was
God.
really fast.
Wow, damn. I had to think about that for mine.
Yo,
The heck?
it was like instant.
He planned this. He planned this. From start.
I have not seen these questions. I'd just like to put it out there. My heart knew as soon as I heard it. Didn't have to
Alright.
think.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for playing. This is really fun.
That was
Yeah.
great.
Alright, going back to your internships, you are doing your second one at SurveyMonkey as a software engineer intern, and you first joined the company as a full stack engineer intern in 2019. First of all, how did you hear about SurveyMonkey and what inspired you to apply there?
So my story is pretty funny because I actually I haven't heard of them in quite a while until Hack the North happened, and they sent out an email to applicants and they were like, hey, we're hiring. You've been scheduled for an interview with us. If you want to, you can book it, da 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 da. And I was like, okay. So I checked them out. saw a bit about them, and I was like, okay, this seems pretty interesting. At Hack the North, I had my interview. That's where I heard a bit about the culture, and I started getting like really interested in it. So I had kind of a bit of a reverse. They kind of, I guess, reached out to me, and that's how I heard of them. But oh man, I'm so happy that happened.
Yeah, probably the best thing that could possibly happen to you. Like your dream job came to you. You didn't have to. You didn't have to go to it.
Absolutely.
It's all about timing, honestly.
Yeah. Yo, Taylor, I can actually imagine you as like a developer advocate for SurveyMonkey. Like that would actually be so sick. I would totally buy SurveyMonkey as like all their proprietary like enterprise software. I'll use them all just because of you, just to see your videos.
I'll get this to higher management. Rafid will buy enterprise.
SurveyMonkey, if you're listening right now, hire this man as your developer advocate.
Yeah, we'll refer you for sure. You'll get
all
2
right.
referral letters.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So I was gonna ask you, so like, what was the process for like the internship with SurveyMonkey, like the whole interview process? I want to know the juices because it is your dream job and you are the most passionate about this. And like, what differentiates this compared to like all your other work terms that you've done?
Okay, so hands down, a lot of places I worked at have all been very good. I've been to a lot of great places where I worked at tech, had really passionate people, even had really good culture. Hands down, the thing that separates SurveyMonkey is the entire company, all the way up to the leadership, believes so firmly in their whole culture message. They have a few values that they stand by. Fundamentally, all of it, in short, revolves around just being amazing people overall, being respectful to others, cultivating growth, always stay curious is effectively their slogan. And the CEO himself believes in it so much. I've never had it where I was so close listening in on the CEO talking about issues involved with the diversity and inclusion groups, with just talking so down to earth about what he expects out of his employees, the kind of life that he wants to cultivate. He's talked about how they explicitly won't serve dinner because they're like, we don't want you here, go home. We don't want you to stay here forever. Like, don't live here, go be with your families, be with your friends. Yeah, fundamentally, the culture is just amazing. They don't stand for inequality. They're always at the forefront of trying to figure out what can we do next, not just to copy everyone else, just to put up a pride flag to show that we support. Their focus is what can we actually do to make difference. That, on top of an already amazing tech culture, just makes like the dream environment for me. And that is fundamentally what I think really sets them apart.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that'll be super helpful for like people who actually are really motivated now, as you're like showing so much enthusiasm for SurveyMonkey. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would want to like, jump aboard the SurveyMonkey bandwagon.
Absolutely. Go apply to SurveyMonkey. Go work there.
So both Kinaxis and SurveyMonkey are Ottawa-based mid-sized companies that offers honestly exciting internship opportunities. Can you talk about the difference in company and work culture between the two?
As I mentioned, both of them are absolutely amazing places to be, both phenomenal shops. I would argue that they have a lot of similarities with kind of their approach to tech. They're both companies with a lot of really involved developers who are really passionate about learning. I think that's a really important thing wherever you're looking, just because if the developers around you are passionate about learning, it means that there's going to be people who care about your growth, which is really important. So both of them definitely do amazing jobs at that. Again, for me, I'd say the main difference is just at SurveyMonkey, the CEO really gets involved with everything, and that's a huge plus for me. And I think it just goes to show like a simple difference like that really can make a world of a difference.
You spoke very fondly about the culture at SurveyMonkey. What are some of the activities organized there that contribute to such a culture?
Oh boy. Okay, so there are so many things that they do. I think overall the approach is they hold things not as these like forced team outings. It's very like things are done to make you want to be there with people. Like they try and foster a culture that makes you want to go out with your coworkers. So they just host a lot of opportunities for you to go and connect with people. They host yoga days. They host, they have a games room that's always open for going and relaxing, getting to know different people. I've met so many different people there. In the internship context specifically, we've had like paint nights, we've had go-karting.
Hey!
All sorts of different outings. They hold concerts for people to go and show off some talents. Like
concerts. That's amazing.
Effectively, anything that you want to go talk about and show off, they make a space for it. For the really serious topics like racial injustice and LGBTQ plus issues, they make sure to put resources into having groups for that. So all of this together, I'd say, really brings people together. There's ultimately places to connect with anyone. No one really feels left out because there's something for everyone.
Now we are going to focus on the next topic of the podcast, which is the personal identity and mental health portion. Going back to the work-life balance at SurveyMonkey and how welcoming it is, you didn't always go by Taylor. What is your story behind changing your name? And what's the reactions you encountered from people around you towards this decision?
Yeah, so this is definitely a topic I'm really passionate about, and something that's of course super personal to me. My kind of context on this story is that I grew up in an environment, just in like a household environment that I'd say wasn't super fostering towards being different outside of the typical gender norms. And definitely for all of my life, I've been breaking those and finding ways to break those, and that's just how I've wanted to be able to express myself. So that being said, this whole kind of change came around from ultimately a big revelation of being able to accept myself. Again, growing up, I wouldn't say I was able to really do that and carried a lot of baggage around that. Once I was able to really hold on to my own identity, accept myself as being non-binary, accept myself presenting how I want to, that helped immensely with things, and it really, really felt like a whole new chapter in my life. And I felt like my old name was tied to this fake image of myself that I put on just because that's what I was told to do. Reactions to it were definitely that, I mean, my friends that I knew were very close to me and were very accepting of things, were some of my biggest support, and I cannot thank them enough for this. My family was mixed, as it was the negative environment that I grew up in. That was definitely where the toughest part was. It did get better as things went on, but it's definitely something that was really rough and stopped it from being as smooth as it could have been. My workplace has definitely been super open and accepting and fostering of me being able to figure myself out. So again, I can't thank them enough for all of that.
So like, yeah, I really do get that, because when your work becomes like a family to you and they are supporting you through tough times, I don't think anything in the world could replace that. And I definitely know what that's like. I am actually so happy you're able to find that. It's not easy to come across a community that appreciates you for who you are. And I can see why you love SurveyMonkey and how you appreciate your friends who supported you all through these difficult times. I'm glad that me and Dorina got a chance to be your friends as well. I think we're privileged to get you on this podcast and to tell your story of what you've been keeping inside for all this time. It's probably my proudest moment that you were able to tell me about it a few months back, and I was honestly so accepting of this. As long as you're a decent person in my books, that's the only thing that matters to me. But that's just my take on things. So, I was actually wondering, what advice do you have for anyone who's going through a similar journey as yours?
For anyone going through things similar to my journey, I can only speak from my own experience. There's of course going to be people who have more supportive parts in some areas, have less supportive parts in other areas. I can't give a general advice as to what will apply to everyone. Some people who oppose you will come around, some won't, is the sad reality. What I can say is that it does get better over time, because even if the people around you can't change, what you can control is your perception of the situation, what you make of things. I think the biggest thing was just the more that time went on, the more I accepted that just no matter what I do, someone's going to be upset. Someone's going to hold a negative opinion of something. You can't control other people, and I think over time I started caring a lot less about that and really started letting go of what other people thought. So my biggest advice would be to point back to exactly what I mentioned before. What other people think of me is none of my business.
Exactly, for sure. I definitely agree with that advice. In your opinion, how progressive has the tech industry been in terms of diversity in race and gender identities?
It's very interesting because I think the tech is simultaneously one of the most progressive fields for that, and also simultaneously one of the absolute most backwards, slow-moving places for that. I don't know particularly why, but I definitely think some of the most progressive, impactful cultures I've seen have come from some software companies. Again, here's where I have to give a huge shout out to SurveyMonkey for how much they have done to really foster this sort of environment, to really move forwards. But there's also some places in tech, particularly notorious, unfortunately, in the game development industry, of sexual harassment allegations, horrible bigotry, horrible racism, so many problematic areas. In terms of how it's going, it really depends on the area, I think, but it's great seeing some places really moving forwards, and I think those companies really need to be highlighted for what they're doing to set an example for other companies to follow in their suit.
I even messaged you about this. In the end, we're all building a product, and in tech, we're not here to care about whose race is what and whose gender is what. And we're all here to develop and build things in the end. I don't think these factors should hold us back, because they're just holding our growth back. And everyone in the end wants to have a fun team and be part of a great community. I just think that in the end, everyone wants to have a memorable product in tech, whatever it may be. I don't understand how politics actually comes into this. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree. This is something that just simply doesn't belong in the workplace. I think the problem is sometimes it's not even a matter of things being political. It's sometimes employees will literally think, I don't even want to say employees, this can be managers, people at the top, people at the bottom, will literally think less of a person or have less expectations of someone because they're a woman, because they're someone of color, because that some sexual identity or sexual orientation they don't agree with. And this is fundamentally the problem. People have these messed up views where they'll look at people way differently depending on these factors. And so even if someone's not trying to explicitly bring politics into it, the problem is this inequality. And that's something that's really huge.
I just want to say thank you for sharing that personal experience with us, Taylor. It's definitely not easy, especially when it comes from, it's, most of your life, something that it's part of your journey, right? It's close to your heart. Something that a lot of us students have experienced is imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is what describes those who suffer from chronic self-doubt, feeling like a fraud, or feeling inadequate despite having evident success or accomplishments. Taylor, have you ever felt like that at some point in your life?
Absolutely. I think software is one of the most prominent fields for that, because even just in general, I guess throughout all fields, we're in an era of so much tech, so much media, so much connectivity, which is great. We can always know what people are up to. But the downside is we always know what people are up to. And what our brain naturally tends to do is we tend to pick out people's highlights. We tend to look at different people and pick out the best things going on from everyone's lives. And what happens is we start comparing our entire life to these hand-picked best scenarios from many different people. And ultimately, I feel like almost everyone goes through imposter syndrome right now just because of this dilemma, how connected we all are. You're always going to be seeing other people's statuses, and it's just human nature to want to compare yourself to them. And again, with these social media networks that really highlight the best parts of your life, it makes this unrealistic projection of what your life is actually about to others. And I think that's one of the real major contributors to feeling imposter syndrome.
Absolutely, I completely agree, especially with all of this social media all around us. We always tend to compare ourselves. What advice would you have for anyone who experiences imposter syndrome?
So honestly, I think it's the first step is really acknowledging it. Acknowledge that, okay, why am I getting imposter syndrome? Why am I feeling bad? If it's from what I said, like you're looking on like LinkedIn or social media and you see these different people have these different promotions, the first step is to acknowledge it. The first step is to acknowledge, okay, I am one person. I know about 500 people. I saw something good from like 2 or 3 people on my friends list. Those just happened to be the people that I saw. This is not representative of everyone I know. This is not representative of their entire life. This is one specific thing that happened in one person's specific life. Ultimately, I think the most real quote is, we compare our behind the scenes to other people's front stage. I think that just summarizes it so well. When you think about it, what you kind of need to do is either think about it in terms of, okay, what's your front stage? Don't think about your behind the scenes. Don't think about your details that not everyone knows. But if you can, obviously the best thing to do is find a way to stop needing that comparison, stop relying on that comparison. That's the ultimate long-term
How
fix.
do you come up with those amazing motivational lines? I really like that one too. That's a shirt quote right there. Definitely.
I 100% agree. Like, whatever Taylor's saying, like, is like Morgan Freeman level inspirational quotes. You're the Nelson Mandela of
to be honest. Yeah. For anyone listening, go check out Taylor's YouTube. I'm pretty sure there's way more advice there than what's
definitely
right now.
100%. I'll 100% subscribe. So, speaking of YouTube, we were mentioning about MPJ from Fun Function earlier. So, it's been your role model to describe of like an inspirational developer who publicizes about mental health. So, what role has mental health played in your journey so far?
So, honestly, I think one of the reasons I really connected with him is I'm someone who's personally had quite a few mental health struggles throughout my life. dealing with non-binary issues mentioned before, trying to figure out my identity, battling depression, anxiety. When I was out there for the first times, looking on YouTube, talking to other people, seeing who was out there, I never felt like I fit in, because I felt like I had all these things I was hiding that no one else dealt with. And I feel like MPJ was one of the first people I saw where he was this, to me, this very respectable figure of authority, this mentor that I really looked up to. And he openly talked about these things just as a part of him. He'd openly talk about the things that he was going through. And that was one of the first times where I really realized, like, wow, I'm not alone in this. Like, this is something that other people deal with. And I'm like, look at where he's at. So honestly, he's had a very big impact both on me wanting to start this channel and my own value of myself.
Last question about your journey so far. What advice would you give to anyone, whether in high school or university, trying to navigate their university life, personal life, and career?
So, independent of what field you're going into, my personal advice before anything else is always just calendar everything. That is one of the biggest changes I made to my life going into university, and something I was so happy about. Even if you're someone who has a very strong memory and is really good at remembering when you have things coming up, it's so helpful knowing that you're never going to have a conflict you didn't anticipate, knowing that you're never going to forget about anything, being able to take a glance at what your month is like, different things that apply to all sorts of different people. So I think that's my biggest advice personally.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for sharing your journey with us. For me, one piece of advice I took from listening to you is always remind myself that I'm trying my best, and even though there's always going to be someone out there better than me, it's important to acknowledge that what I can bring to the table and work with what I've got. And even with your internships, a culture fit was something that I honestly discovered when I had my 4th internship, and I hope the audience can take away some key points on how important it is to find a culture that fits you. As well as what you said about side projects, it should come from genuine interest, and it should be fun and not something that you should do just to put on your resume. We greatly appreciate you as our first guest on the show. You can find links to Taylor's YouTube channel, Tay Talks Tech, and his Instagram at TaylorAbraham72 in the description below. He's also on LinkedIn as Taylor Abraham.
Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it.
Anytime. And be sure to check out Capital Interns. We are on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts as Capital Interns. Follow our socials for the ongoing Amazon gift card giveaway and next episodes at Capital Interns on Facebook, IG, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
The next intern on the panel will be a standout leader within the IEEE organization who is in computer systems engineering at Carleton University. And he has worked at hardware-related companies such as BlackBerry QNX and Erdetto. Stay tuned for our one-on-one chat as we delve into their career, university life, and high school experience. Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Come on, man. Nobody's forcing you to leave, you know. Wiping your slate clean ain't so easy.